365 Radio. It's time for Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. Brought to you by Pickup Outfitters. Since 1997, we've been outfitting trucks, SUVs, and vans at 220 Lake Air Drive or createacommotion.com.
Welcome back into Sikkim 365 Radio. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak. Time for Off the Radar. Taking a look and spending some time on some stories that we might not otherwise get to. Sometimes we would, but this is a good place to interject some of those that we have not yet. So I want to start off with Texas and Steve Sarkisian and, the whole debacle about the bus video that was released. We've talked about it. We had a call earlier in the show asking our thoughts on Bo Davis, Texas D-line coach, yelling at players on the team bus after their loss to Iowa State. And I think for the most part, most people are like, good for him. They've lost 4 games in a row, and obviously something set him off. So long as there was something that set him off and he didn't just walk on the bus and start yelling at guys, that would be taken a little bit differently. But Steve Sarkisian's commented on it now. Steve Sarkisian was asked about the Bo Davis rant and the fact that somebody on the team had to have recorded it and then, sent it out. I mean, that's how we all saw it. But Steve Sarkisian went on to say, I think one thing that jumped out to me when I first saw the video was, one, you could hear the passion in Bo's voice. We really believe in the staff that we hired and what we came here to do. I think you could feel the passion and the want to get it done. I think that Bo exemplifies that. He said, we're here to build a culture that we want. It's just a culture that we're looking for and to stand our ground and what's acceptable and what's not. You're going to have people that buy into what you want to do. We have plenty of young men on our team that are buying in, and we have continued to buy in and that are doing it the way we want it done. Clearly, we have some that don't. He said it was unfortunate that a player recorded that and then sent it to other people, but they have met with the leadership council to discuss what happened, and they've also discussed on whether or not the player who released the video, which I assume they found out, will be disciplined or not. He said young people make mistakes, and that's a mistake they'll handle internally, but it's unfortunate because there's now a narrative that that's how the entire team feels. So they're handling it. That was his basic comments on the video released.
Anytime there's a new coach, there are going to be people who, no matter what, no matter how great the new coach may be, are going to be stalwarts for the old coach. We saw Matt Rule go through it here at Baylor, and I'm sure Dave Aranda went through it at least in some degree, even though that transition wasn't nearly as rocky.
And especially because he couldn't be right in front of him very often.
But yeah, I'm sure. But it does not, I mean, there are people who are, and look, Dave Aranda probably had to contend with people who still might, feel the same way about the 3 coaches they saw before he got here. Mm-hmm. So you don't know how people's attitudes are, but
should the player be disciplined?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Especially among his own, if the leadership council thinks he should, if those other players on the team do. And I do think that, that what Bo Davis said, he said that, if you don't like it, transfer. The transfer portal's right there, and that's going to happen. There's going to be more people leaving the University of Texas this year than maybe ever have in one off season.
And that might be a good thing.
And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I bet Charlie Strong, he got rid of some, and there were still some people who were struggling.
By the way, I was thinking, can you I know it's not going to happen. I know it's not going to, but can you imagine what a 5th straight loss and a loss to Kansas would be like? Oh, my God.
No, it would be an absolute, if it's not already near melting pot.
I mean, Bo Davis would rip the front of the bus off.
Oh my gosh!
Hulk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect that to happen in any way, shape, or form. But I couldn't help but think, what if that did happen?
It's very fortunate for them that Kansas is the one who's on their schedule to help them stop that losing streak.
Oh yeah. By the way, he also talked about the starting quarterback spot last week. Casey Thompson was replaced by Hudson Card. That's kind of been for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say, a little bit of a back and forth in the fan base on who's better or who should be playing or this or that. But he's holding off on naming a starting quarterback. He said that both Hudson Card and Casey Thompson will see some time, but as far as naming an outright starter, he's not going to do that, and I guess we'll see perhaps tomorrow. He said he wanted to evaluate some tape, but maybe on Saturdays when we figure out who would you guys roll with right now? Knowing where they are and what we've seen and all that, what would you do if you were Steve Sarkisian? Just curious.
Talked to an Austin media member at the game 2 weeks ago, and he said that Casey Thompson to him is very Case McCoy, where he's fine. He's fine. But
Case McCoy was really good.
Case McCoy was really good. Case?
Oh, Case. I'm sorry.
Case.
God, I'm
Case
sorry.
McCoy.
No, Case McCoy was
not
just
Colt McCoy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Case McCoy.
Yeah.
His younger brother. He was fine. I mean, he's what they needed at the time. But like what Casey Thompson is today and what Casey Thompson will be in a year and a half, the same thing. Hudson Card has upside, and I think at this point where you're not contending for the Big 12 anymore, and you're about to go play Kansas.
Wait a minute. Didn't Casey Thompson throw for 400 and some yards against Oklahoma? Was that?
Yeah.
Did I just dream that? I mean, he
I don't know
looked
if it was 400. I don't remember the exact number.
But
he did well.
But that's kind of the assessment. I kind of agree. Play the guy with the most upside right now, and then you got the spring to work it out again.
Well, it also could be that, as you've said, for 2 or 3, 4, 8 months, that, okay, I know, but they may not have their next year quarterback on the roster right now.
Yep. So elsewhere, UConn has a new football coach. There was thoughts that maybe they would just shutter the program again, but they are adamant that they are going, to play football, and they're going to keep playing football. And I think they, made a pretty big commitment. Jim Mora is the new head coach at UConn. Was at UCLA just a few years ago. His last season was in 2017. He was 46-30. He's 59 years old. While at UCLA, they went to 4 bowl games in 6 seasons. Of course, he's also been an NFL head coach at a couple stops, both with the Seahawks and the Falcons. They're an FBS independent. They're all in on football, even though it's been a very rocky road for them in football. And he will take over for Randy Edsall, who was let go back in September. So the 1-8 Huskies, who now get ready to play Clemson, have a new football coach, and it's Jim Mora Jr.
Yeah, well, I mean that's probably the best coach they could have hired there.
Is he really 46-30? That's his record. It's better than I thought. I'll never forget what happened to his UCLA Bruins. Wasn't he the head coach when Baylor played them in the Holiday Bowl? Embarrassed them, physically just annihilated them with the running game. But he's been out for a while. He's been an analyst, is that right?
Yeah. He was. And then, of course, his dream job was the University of Washington, and he somehow tripped up. And look, if he does well at Connecticut, Jimmy Lake's not going to be there very long. He might be able to get it again. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's I don't know what everybody's opinions out there are on Jim Mora Jr., but I think in terms of a name and somebody that you can kind of point to as the head of the program, if you're UConn, I mean, you could do much worse, I would say, than a recognizable NFL name. So yeah, Jim Mora Jr. is the new head coach for UConn football. I mentioned earlier that conference realignment appears to be somewhat over for the time being, as the Mid-American Conference announced today that it is going to remain at 12 teams. It will not pursue expansion and wanted to end the speculation, saying, following an analysis and evaluation by the membership, it's been determined our best interests are served in the conference remaining at full 12-member institutions. So basically, here's the realignment dominoes. You had Texas and OU announced they were leaving for the SEC by July 2025. You had Conference USA, who had 9 schools announced that they were leaving. They've since added Liberty, Jacksonville State, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston State, which will start in 2023. Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee states were looked at as potential MAC options, but it was announced that they are going to remain in Conference USA rather than joining the MAC. So because of that, the MAC has decided that they are going to stay pat. And, I guess for right now at least, you will see this kind of slow to a crawl a little bit, although the rumors will be out there about the Big 12. And, of course, Conference USA was on life support. They lost Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA to the American. Marshall left for the Sun Belt, but they are bringing in Liberty, Jacksonville State, New Mexico State, Sam Houston. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot to keep track of, but it looks like for the time being it's slowed to a snail's pace.
Till the Pac-12 gets their TV contract, it probably will be.
Yep. So there is the Mid-American saying that they are going to stay put for those out there looking for more realignment movement. Odell Beckham has a new team. He's agreed to terms with who else? It seems like anytime there's a big name that's available, they go to one of two places. They go to Kansas City or they go to the Los Angeles Rams, and that's where OBJ is headed. He's agreed to deal with the Rams. He was still, rumored to be involved with the Packers, and there was a couple of other teams that were in the mix as well as far as just the speculation that's gone on over the last couple of days. But he's joining the Rams, so in the last 3 weeks, they've added a defensive player.
Von Miller.
Von Miller, yes, and now Odell Beckham Jr. to a roster that already had Matthew Stafford joining the offseason, and they've got Jalen Ramsey. I mean,
he'll be perfect in L.A.
Aaron Donald. It's crazy.
They want star names, and they got them. We'll see if they all get together and get along.
Yeah, we will. But, I mean, can you imagine that pro shop, just all the jerseys they got in there, all the star power they have? But, we will see if it works out for him. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the NFL, Cam Newton is back with the Carolina Panthers and Matt Rule. They cut him a while back, but Sam Darnold's hurt, and he's going to be out for at least a month because of a fractured scapula in his throwing shoulder. They need somebody to just be quarterback, so here comes a familiar face in Cam Newton.
P.J. Walker will start this week, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Cam back. I mean, that's the best guy on the roster right now. They brought Matt Barkley up from the practice squad, and Cam can hand off to Christian McCaffrey. I know that Joe Brady's offensive
12
system
times a game
is different, but McCaffrey's back now. He's back.
But he's not full. Then they should, because he seems to be a little fragile.
Yeah, apparently, because they did kind of end on bad terms. Cam felt like he was forced out and this and that, but
because he was.
Yeah, well, he was. No, he was. Yeah. But I mean, that led to some led to some angst, and that's all been cleared up. Apparently, according to Ian Rappaport, he met with owner David Tepper, their GM, and their VP of football operations, and he'd already previously met with Matt Rule, had an honest conversation. They cleared the air, and they're moving forward. So Cam Newton is back with the Carolina Panthers. Just a couple more things here. I'm sure everybody's seen the news of what happened in Houston this past weekend at the big Travis Scott concert. Just a tragedy with the crowd getting out of control, people getting, basically stomped on. I mean, as the crowd just lost control, and there was nobody authority-wise that was able to do much of anything about it. I mean, Travis Scott, the performer and the organizer of the festival, his hometown's Houston. He's the reason why there was an Astro World Festival to begin with. It's all him, basically. But in very odd timing, the Houston Rockets were apparently going to hold a Travis Scott Day yesterday, but they had to postpone it because of the fact that, he's just been recently in the news for a festival that went awry and left 8 people dead and many others still in the hospital. So instead, they held a moment of silence before the game. And, that was their first home game since that happened this past weekend. So they nixed the Travis Scott idea. Probably good there. But
probably a good, smart thing to do.
What a bad story that was. I don't know how much of that y'all watched. I did. And we've seen it before, across the world that's happened. But that was an awful thing to witness. All right, tonight, college football. North Carolina is at number 21 Pittsburgh, starting at 6:30 on ESPN. So got a good little game there coming up tonight with a top 25 matchup. Also tonight in the NFL, 6-2 Ravens will be on the road against the 2-7 Miami Dolphins. That starts a little bit after 7 o'clock. So there is your 2 big football games later on tonight, and those are a few things that are off the radar.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it. We are loaded up in this 5 o'clock hour. Cam Newton back with Carolina and Matt Rule. That's one of those, hey, we don't need you, but can you come back?
Yeah.
We kind of do. All right, when we come back, Sam Bradshaw breaks down Oklahoma and Baylor. Then Max Olson on college football this week, and then Jennifer Smoak on fantasy football. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
If you are looking to buy a new